Okay, so welcome for real this time to the recording, and we are going to start the presentation. Welcome to GPC. So yeah, I'm Anthony. I'm Vice Pres. Do gameplay stuff. Yeah.
I don't think you're sharing right now.
Oh, you're so right. That's embarrassing. All right. Yeah, let's do this one. Cool. All right, round two. Welcome to GPC. I'm Anthony. I do gameplay programming. I'm Vice Pres.
I'm Matt. What's up? I'm the VP internal or whatever, something like that. Um, and yeah, I'm glad to be here.
All right. So, what are we going over today? We're going to talk about what source control is and why we use it. A couple of different GitHub concepts. If you don't know what that is, again, we'll get to it. And we have a little announcement at the end for some stuff related to us and some other stuff related to other clubs. So, what is source control? It's basically a way of storing files such that you can revert to previous versions of those files, and you can also access those files pretty much anywhere where you can access the internet. So think of something like cloud saving on Steam. You have a version of your save that's being uploaded to Steam, and then you go on a different computer, and now you can play where you left off instead of starting a whole new version. So why do we use it? Well, it's useful to keep track of the different versions of the software that we make as game developers. Maybe we have something like a bug that we introduce and we're like, oh, no, we don't want that, so we go back to a previous version. We can also send these files to other developers for them to work on. And also, the best part about this is you can work on your game anywhere you can access source control. So you can be like, hey, I want to work on my stuff at home. Now I'm going to work on it at the lab. And then, if you have other software that also allows you to sync over the internet, it becomes a very seamless process. Just dragging the meat over to my other window so I can see the chat. Okay. So let's get started with these things here. If you've never heard of any of these, we're going to explain them. So Git, what is Git? It is the actual source control software that is under the hood of everything that we're going to be using today. So basically, it's the thing that's going to be sending the commands to GitHub, the website where all your stuff is going to be stored, and allowing you to clone and pull and all those things that we will also explain. GitHub itself, like I said, is going to be this website slash tool that is built on top of Git in order to make it easier for you to use. So you have an account that you can make where you can store multiple different repositories, and we'll get into those. And then you can take those repositories and clone them on different machines, have different versions, pretty much as many as you want. And the best part is because you're a student, I think you get some access to some other features that you would not get otherwise. But regardless, for tools, you can use git bash / the command line, which is basically just a command prompt window. Or you could take the arguably much better route, which is a graphical user interface. So basically, your calculator app instead of typing commands for how to use a calculator in command prompt or something. It's a lot easier to use, so that's what Matt is going to be covering today. He's going to be covering specifically Gitkraken, which we'll link at the end. But what are all the words I just said? Well, repositories are collections of files that can be changed, cloned, reverted to previous versions. Basically everything I just said. Imagine it as a folder that you can just access from anywhere. It's pretty much like Google Drive, but for developers. The best part about it is that that version control feature where you can see the changes that you've made while you're putting them onto the cloud or taking them off the cloud. You can see the different changes, which allows you to tell whether or not you want to keep a version and blah, blah, blah. But Yeah, they're stored on your GitHub account, as mentioned before. And, well, what happens when we want to share these changes? This is where we talk about local versus remote. So, when you're working with multiple developers and you want to share a repository with somebody, um, add them to the repo through like an inviting process. There's something that you have to understand is this concept that your version on your machine is not always going to be the same as the version of the cloud. So in order to change that, we have to work with pushing and pulling the different versions that we have. So on the server or the cloud, we have the version that's on the cloud. And when I want to, let's say, work on a different computer, I'm going to take that version, copy it onto my machine, and do my work. That version is separate from, let's say, the version I have at home. Maybe I have some other stuff I'm working on at home that's different. And yeah, that it can be a little bit confusing at first, but basically, this is just the simple concept of take your essay on Google Drive, download it, and work on it in Word, and it's going to be a little bit different. Now you want to update it on Google Drive, you put it back onto Google Drive, and you delete the old version. That's the basic idea. So what is that I just explained? It's pushing, basically. So let's say I have a text file in my repository, remember they're kind of like folders, and I add the word hi. And I want to push that onto the remote. Using our fancy GUI, we can press a button to do that, and it will simply update the main version of our repository to have that word hi in a text file. So yeah, you basically just commit your changes and slap them onto the remote, and then anybody else who has access to the repo can see that you've added the word hi to a text file. And you may be able to see how this might be useful for us game developers, because this is a very good way of sending code around. And the opposite of this is pulling. This is when you update your local version to match the remote. So let's say Matt types in the word hi in a text file and he pushes it to the repo, and I'm like, cool, I got the repo cloned, I want to update it. You click the pull button in your GUI, and now I have the text file that Matt said, or that Matt typed out just a moment ago. And so when it comes to projects, especially game projects, where there's a lot of code, it can get quite messy, especially if you're working on it at the same time. It can be a bit of a problem, especially if you're working on the same or related files. So the concept is called merging. And so let's say we have a text file, Matt types hi, and I take that change and I'm like, cool, I'm going to add something to it. I go to the next line on the text file and I type hello and I push it. Now that's cool. The text file says hi, hello. But now let's say me and Matt are like, doing our own thing. We're working on stuff, and I want to add how are you to the next line. And Matt wants to add, I don't know, where are you going to the line, the same line. Because of the way merging works, we basically get this problem called a merge conflict. So you have, let's say, like that example I just made, it will say, hey, these two changes are happening on the same line. You can't do that. And we'll get more into that in the demo. But basically, the idea of merging is what I explained previously of me making the hi, hello change and then Matt adding something else. We're essentially merging the different versions that we have together. Why is this useful? Well, let's say I have a movement setup that I've made, and Matt has a gun setup that he's made. In order for us to add those two features into the game, we could use merging. So Matt pushes his version onto the remote, and I'm like, cool, I take that version, my game now has gun and jump, or gun and movement. Now I merge that together, I push it onto the remote. Now everybody has gun and movement. But this can get messy if we don't use branches. What are branches? Well, if we think of the repo as a tree, kind of like how folders you can think of as trees, you can think of the main version as the trunk of the tree. And each different branch that you make is a variation of that version. So why do we use this instead of just keeping everything on main? It's to keep things organized and to make sure that we have as little merge conflicts as possible, especially since repo headaches are probably one of the worst things that you can encounter when you're doing game development for the first time, really. So to give an example of what you would do in terms of changes, I'll make the movement and gun example again. So we have the main version of our game, let's say it's like a 2D platformer or something, and I make a branch called movement. I'm working on it, it's all done, and I'm ready to push it to, I'm ready to merge it in with master. I'm ready to add on my movement to master. And that's all fine and dandy. And Matt's got the same thing going, except he's doing it with guns. So as long as we're working on separate things, we are not going to touch the same code, and we're not going to get any of those nasty merge conflicts that, again, we'll talk about in the demo. But yeah, so using branches, we can add these modular pieces onto our game and not have to worry about all this messiness of making sure somebody commits in the right order. So yeah, if you're a little bit confused by that, you can look at this here diagram of what it kind of looks like to use a repo with branches. You have your different branches that you can then merge back into the base. And that's basically the whole idea. So yeah, just a quick summary before we get into the demo. Git is the source control software that is going to be issuing the commands to send files back and forth. GitHub is the layer built on top. It's the website and other software that we're going to be using in order to make our lives easier so we don't have to memorize all these really complicated stuff. And repositories, again, are basically just folders that exist on the cloud. You can change them, you can clone them to your computer or a different computer, and that creates a different version. So you have a local version and a remote version. The remote is always on the cloud. If you make a change on your local version and you want to put it on the cloud, that's called pushing. If you have an update on the remote that you want to take and add it to your version, that's called pulling. And now if me and Matt make two different things and we want to combine those versions together, that's called merging. And the best way to do that is with branches, like I said a slide ago, feature branches, where we're basically going to be focusing on making individual parts of the game and then putting them together. So yeah, time for live demo.
Alrighty. I got a bit of a weird setup here. I got to do it on my laptop. The one monitor struggle. I'm gonna walk you guys through the live demo here, though. So let me.
Sure.
Actually, we can take questions. Sure.
Yeah, just give Matt some time.
No, yeah, no, we can take questions for sure. That's a good idea.
We definitely have time. Also, sorry if you guys can hear the cars in the background. Is anybody like completely lost? Because we definitely have time to go back and talk about things if we need to.
If you have any questions, feel free.
Yes, this stuff is important. Can GitHub Desktop work, or is Git better? GitHub Desktop is a graphical user interface that abstracts Git, so they're actually the same thing. In short, if it is easier for you to use, definitely use that because, at least in my opinion, command line is just harder to get into. Yeah, this is recorded. GitKraken is another graphical user interface. It's a little bit different than GitHub Desktop, but it is built on Git. So the concepts are exactly the same. It just looks a little bit different and functions a little bit differently. I believe the demo is actually going to be using GitKraken. So
Yep. Yeah, it's basically, it just makes it easier to use. There's different ways you can interface with Git. But in the end, it's all kind of the same functionality. You just have different ways of using it.
in any case, oh, do you need to buy a premium thing for GitKraken? Not as a student, and not if you're not making commercial projects or products, I guess. I personally use GitHub Desktop because I just didn't want to have to, pay if I wanted to make something commercial, and it was not that big of a switch for me. But again, whatever works for you. You guys are in school right now, so GitKraken's probably a good option for you guys. As a student, you get all the features for free, I believe. So, yeah, you would just need to go to the website and actually sign up and all that. But we'll drop links and all that after the demo because again, don't worry, this isn't like a follow along demo.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll show you guys briefly about the student pack. It's like a GitHub wide thing. So if you sign up for it once, you get like everything GitHub related, including like GitKraken and whatever else. But it is, yeah, like Anthony said, it's free as long as you're not making the something that you're gonna like make money off of.
A final note here on repositories, if we really don't have any questions, which again, do not be afraid to have questions. We will not bite, I promise. Yeah, if you're confused about repos, just think about Google Drive. It's the easiest, most transferable example. It's not exact, but you know, the example I made earlier about how you can go and edit how on the remote and share it with other people. Think of it like Google Drive if you're still confused. Alternatively, watch the record.
Any more questions? Yeah, like James is saying, I'll walk you guys through it. I'll go through from the very beginning, but you'll need both a GitHub account and GitKraken. The GitHub basically like is the kind of part that like it stores your repo. So it like kind of hosts it, and then GitKraken is an interface, which we'll see in a bit. But it looks like we don't have any more questions. Hopefully, there's some knowledge sinking in.
Hope so.
If not, hopefully the demo will help kind of make things click for you guys. Yep, there's a tutorial there. And
yeah, and alternatively, you guys can also just, if anybody has questions, just come and ask anybody at GPC. We will be more than happy to help. But yeah, I will mute now so Matt can take over.
yep. So I'll get started here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to make an account on GitHub, of course. So let me go sign up. And I'm going to have links to everything that you need. So GitHub, GitKraken, and some other stuff as well, which I'll get into later. But let's say I have this test email that I made. Oh, I forgot the 5. So of course, just, sign up. Boom. 1, 2, 3, 5. Okay. Product updates doesn't matter. And now I need to solve this very difficult puzzle. Spiral Galaxy. And there isn't a whole lot of settings here in terms of like setting your account, like just like that, I'm done. And just to reiterate, like I mentioned before, we are going to, I'd prefer that you just watch for now instead of following along, and then later you can review the recording. Just because if you do try to follow along and you end up getting lost, it's going to be really, it's going to like mess up the kind of flow of the recording when you want to watch it back later if I'm going back and trying to fix stuff. So I'd recommend just following along for now. And yeah, let me continue. So where's my email? There we go. Boom. And you can go ahead and personalize it if you want. I'm going to skip that for now. And wow, cool animation. And just like that, that's it. You have your GitHub account. Nice and easy. Next, I'm going to install GitKraken. So, of course, the GitKraken website. I'm going to install and run it. And this time you'll have a couple settings. It's fairly straightforward. There isn't too much, but I'm going to run it through anyway just to show you guys here. So here, obviously, you need to log in first. So I already made my GitHub account, so I'm going to sign in with GitHub. And this will just automatically link it for you. I can just authorize it. And yep. And now I just make a profile. So whatever, I'll put whatever I want here. For your email, I'd recommend using the same email that you used for GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And this is the main setting that you want to, I guess, worry about. For us, the decision is pretty straightforward, but basically you have this repo tab or terminal tab. Basically, the repo tab is a more visual interface, which is going to be easy, especially for beginners. It's going to be easier to kind of find your way versus the terminal interface or command line style interface, where it's more kind of based on typing in commands. So we're going to go ahead and make a repo tab. And we don't care about this because we don't need the trial. Free. And now we're in GitKraken. So next up, I'm going to show you guys how to create a repo. So to start, there's a couple ways. You can see I'm on this new tab here, and it automatically has opens for opening repo, cloning, and starting one. You can also click this folder in the top left if you're ever on another tab, and it'll open it up. And you have open, clone, and init here. Open means that you already have a repo that's on your machine, and you just want to open it up. Clone means that there's a repo somewhere else, so like on GitHub, and you want to get that on your computer. And then init means you're going to make a repo from scratch. So I'm going to create one. Only one person in your team is going to have to create one. So I'm going to go ahead and initialize it. I'm going to do it on github.com because that's where we signed up, and select my account. Give the repo a name. So I'll say, my test repo, whatever. You can put a description, public or private. I'd recommend having it private unless you are doing anything that's going to be potentially commercial. And then you'll choose where to clone it. So this is where on your local machine it's going to store the files. So I'm going to go ahead and let me delete this old one. And I'm going to go ahead and clone it just in this folder. This is where I keep my Unity projects. So I'll clone it here. And the most important thing here is the gitignore template. The default branch name is fine, whatever. The license you don't really need if you're just working on a school project, but the gitignore template, basically a gitignore file will ignore certain files that aren't necessary to be replicated on everyone's local machine. So let's say I have like a build file, like an exe or like a setting file. I don't necessarily want that to be shared on the repo because number one, it's going to take up space, and number two, it's going to mess with other people if they want to have different versions of their own settings and whatnot. So having a gitignore template is great for that. And if you scroll all the way down, there's actually a pre-made one for Unity. Just scroll up a little bit. There's a pre-made one for Unity that you can use. So make sure you select that. And then we're going to go ahead and create. And now we have our repository created. Let me get it in full screen. So we have our repository here. It's asking me which branch main should push and pull from. So if I draw your attention over to the local and remote sections, you'll see on my local machine, I have this main branch, and on the remote and under origin, there isn't anything right now, which means that this branch isn't actually on the remote repository yet. It's only on my local machine. So if I just hit submit, I'd recommend keeping your branch names the same from local and remote. So I'll just hit submit, and you'll see now the remote will have our main branch here. And that's the kind of process that you'll have if you're setting up a repo from scratch. If you are the person that's not making the repo and you just want to join somebody else's repo, if I go over to GitHub and let me go to my repositories, and I have my test repo here. So I want to invite people to my repo. So you're going to go over to the settings and then manage access. And then here you're going to have this collaborator section. So right now there aren't any collaborators. This is where you're going to add your team members. And Anthony wants me to add him, but too bad, I'm adding myself. So I'm going to add my main account, which you can type in username, email, full name, whatever. I know my main account's name, macOS dev, and then add. And then now you guys won't see this part, but basically all this does is it sends an invite through your email, whatever email you have hooked up to your GitHub. Just check that email and it gives you an invite. Really simple. You just click accept. And there we go. And now if I refresh the page over here, you'll see it says pending invite. And now we're good to go. And yeah, Ontario Tech U, yeah. And um, and now if you are the person joining the repo, instead of doing the init, you're going to go to clone. And we're going to clone it from github.com again, because we're using GitHub. And then you're going to select where on your local machine you want it to be placed. So I'm going to say in the same spot. And then you can do a search here and it'll show you, it'll go by username, all the different repos here. And you'll select the repo and then you'll basically just choose the path where you want to put it. And then if you just hit clone, it'll create it on your machine. So yeah, like James was saying, this is for anybody who is joining a teammate's repo instead of being the one person that creates it, because you only need one person to create a repo. Everyone else will join it and they'll clone it to their machines by doing this. And once you hit clone, you will be brought to the same window here. So we have a repo and you guys are using Unity. So I'm going to create a Unity project as well. And let's make a new one. And, whatever. It's fine. So you'll create your Unity project just as you normally do. And it's going to take a little bit to start up. But I'm going to show you guys how you can get your Unity project onto your repository so that you can start collaborating with your teammates on it. And I'll give it a second. Does anyone have any questions so far while I wait for this? Actually, just finished, but I'll take questions anyway if anyone has any on the initial setup. Okay. Keep an eye out, but it doesn't look like anything right now. So I have my my project here, and let's say I'm just gonna, add a script. Why does it say clone instead of join or save? Or why does it use clone instead of join or save? What do you mean by that, James?
Let's jump in on voice. You won't see my face because my camera's still off. But yeah, so I think one of the initial barriers to getting started with GitHub and repos is like the terminology. So
Yeah.
I put that kind of fishing question in there, say when you're going to join, why am I clicking clone instead of like, I want to join this repo or I want to save this work here? Because I think it's important to kind of understand that like it kind of means the same-ish thing from a layperson's perspective. But yeah.
Yeah, it does. It kind of does. Like it could definitely say like join there, but the main idea behind clone is like you're kind of like creating a clone or a copy, you could say. You're creating a copy. Actually, let me read the chat. Isn't that copying the code, sending it back? Kind of, but you're not just copying the code. It's actually the whole repo in and of itself. It basically creates a copy of it and puts it on your local machine. That's what cloning is. So you're taking the whole structure that's on the repository and you're creating a copy of it and you're putting it just on your local machine so that you can work on it. Okay. And yeah, sending it back, pushing, committing. Yes. And we will get into that in a second, actually. But I'm going to create a script here just for example's sake. Let's call it the player. And I'll open that up. But here, you can see that I created my test repo here, and this is the project that has that's like a clone of the repo because it has this .git file. So wherever you see the .git file, that's how you know it's the root of the repository on your machine. And then I also have this new Unity project that I created. And the way that I will get the Unity project onto the repo is actually just by cutting it and pasting it in. So I'm actually going to go ahead and close this now because I'm going to be moving it. So I'm just going to go into my Unity project, and just in the root here, where all my assets and whatnot are, I will cut, and then I'll go ahead and paste it into my repo folder where it has this .git file. So I'll just paste everything in here. And you'll see right away, it'll pop up with this plus sign. But before I deal with that, I'm going to open it back up. And you'll see if you try to open it normally, it's not going to work. It's going to give you an invalid path because it was moved now. So we can actually just get rid of that from this list. And then we can add an existing project. So we can just go to where repo is, and we can add that project now. It's the same project, it was just moved to a different location. I don't know why hold on, did I mess something up? Let me try this again. Let me remove it, add Unity project. Oh no, my repo. So I'm going to add my repo. There we go. Oh, I think I was opening the wrong folder, but here I have my test repo, which is my folder where my repository is. So now I can open that up. And in the Git Kraken side, I have this plus that popped up. So if you click on it, you can see all the changes that you were made. Plus just means that they were files that were added. You also see if it's red, that means you got rid of something. And if it's yellow, that means you changed something. So you'll see that as you work through. But you see we have all these files that were added here. You'll see there's actually only 29 files, and that's because of the git ignore. If you didn't have the git ignore, this would be like 4,000 or 5,000, something crazy like that. So that's why you want to have the git ignore, because those files are not necessary to be hosted on the repo. So now I want to push this project onto the remote version, because I have it on my local version now, but I want to get it onto the cloud, I guess you could call it. So you can individually add files, but in this case, and in most cases where you're working, you'll just want to move all your changes over. So now they're staged. This is a 3-step process. So first we have to stage the files, and then we have to commit the files, and then we have to push. All 3 of these steps are working towards the same thing. You basically are just getting your files onto the repository, and you just have to take this 3-step process to get there. So git ignore just ignores unnecessary files. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you make a repository and you see that you have like 4,000 files, that means you did not set up the Unity git ignore, which when we initialized the repo, that's where it was. Okay, and so I staged my files. Now I'm going to commit it. To commit, you need to put a commit message. So we'll say initial project setup. Click the commit button. And now you'll see over on my local version, I have this 1 and an arrow pointing up. And if I hover over it, it says I'm 1 ahead. Basically what that means is I have changes on my local version that aren't yet on the repository. So basically means the repository is not up to date with my changes. and the 1 signifies how many commits. So right now I'm 1 commit ahead, which means that there's 1 commit that isn't on the repo yet. This is an easy way to tell if you have pushed or updated the repository with your changes, and also if there are changes on the repository that you don't have on your local machine. So if your teammate were to push something and you didn't pull that change yet, it'll tell you on the branch. The same thing here, it'll have a number and then an arrow pointing down, which means that there's changes that you need to pull. And if you wanted to pull the changes, you just click the pull button up here. This one is just a one-step process, and it'll give you the confirmation message here. So it's always good to pull. I'd recommend you always commit your changes before you pull. So you'll commit, and then you'll pull, and then you can push your changes. And that's only if your teammates are making changes on the same branch. You don't always need to do it, but it's always good to pull periodically, or at least check over here if there's any changes that were made. But right now I'm just going to push. So I'm going to go ahead and push to origin main. We see push successfully. There's no longer the arrow here, which means that my changes are now on the repository. Okay, so now your teammates in this case could pull on the main branch, and they would have this initial project set up that you have here. Pulling true. Yeah, you can do that too. So if we go over to GitHub and I go over to code, you can see that we have this initial project set up here 3 minutes ago, and all these files were added. And pulling first, yep. Yes, exactly, yeah. It's a good practice to pull before you push, so that way there isn't a conflict, like James saying. So next up, I am going to create a branch. So Anthony mentioned them before. Branches are essentially different versions of the project you can think of. So if I have this main branch here, and it has, this initial project set up, I could make a new branch by clicking branch here and then putting in the name. I'm going to say, player movement, let's say. And now I will create the player movement on my local machine, and I can push that onto the remote. I want to keep the name the same, so I just hit submit. And now there's 2 branches on the repo, which means there's 2 different versions of the project. So if I make some changes right now on player movement, like if I were to go into my player script here that I have opened up for my project, and I were to add, say, a void move, just for example's sake, say move player, and let's say, I'll change my position to the right. Sure. So I made some changes here to my player script just for example's sake, and I added the player transform moving to the right. And now, before it was just showing me this, which is my last commit. But if you see at the top here, it has this work in progress, and it has the yellow icon here, which means that I made a change to an existing file. You'll see that I have unstaged changes. So I can, again, stage, and then made player move right, add a commit message, commit the change, and now I can push it. And now on the repository, on this branch only, it'll have those changes. My main branch, which I'll show in a second, does not have these changes. So I have my move player. And if I just switch over to my main branch, it'll reload the project. And then if I go to my code file, you'll see it's gone. So different versions to the project. And same with on the on GitHub here. I'll refresh just to make sure it's up to date. But I have my main branch here that only has this initial project set up. And if I check a different branch, player movement, it'll have this extra commit here as well. And I should probably explain the way that I switch between the branches is I just double left click. It's the easiest way to do it. You can also right click and go to checkout. It's called checking out a branch. But you can just double click. It's the easiest way. So let's say on main, there are also some changes made. So if I make the void move player function, and let's say I move the player to the left, again, just for example's sake. Normally, you wouldn't want to make the changes to the same file on multiple branches if you can avoid it. But if there are cases where you do, I'm going to show you how to merge those changes together. So let me stage made player move left and commit and then push. And now I have the changes to the player.cs on two different branches. Using branches is helpful for features. Yep. Yeah, using branches for features is great. Kind of like here, like player movement being its own branch. You could even break that down even more if you have different people working on different parts of the movement. But generally creating a new branch for a different feature is a great idea, because if everybody's working in the same branch, you're going to run into problems where you make changes and then your teammate makes changes and then you both push and then someone might overwrite changes or whatever. And it can be a bit of a headache. So literally any game will use repositories for version control. And that allows them to do things like public beta environments. Okay. So I have these changes, and let's say I want to merge them together now. Super important piece of advice: always keep your main branch a stable working version. Never push something that's broken to your main branch. So what I'm going to do is, instead of merging player movement into main, I'm first going to move main into player movement, which is just a bit of a safer way of going about it. So I'm in player movement now. I want to merge my changes from main into it. So I'm going to right click and I can merge main into player movement. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And here you'll say there was a merge conflict. A file conflict was found attempting to merge into player movement. So this means that basically the reason merge conflicts happen is Git doesn't know which version of the file that you want to choose, because it's ambiguous. There's changes on both branches and it doesn't know which version to take. So you kind of have to decide that, basically. And the way we resolve this in GitKraken, it has a really nice interface. So I'll just go over to my conflicted file and I'll click on it. Do not click on mark resolved, because we're going to resolve this ourselves. So make sure you click on the file, and then you'll get this kind of triple window set up here. So what this is showing is in the blue side here on the left, I have my version of the file that's on my player movement branch. On the right side in yellow, I have the version of the file that's on my main branch. And then on the bottom here, I have my final output of the file after the merge is finished. And you can see right now, the output doesn't have anything, but I have these checkboxes here, and I can select which file's contents I want to take. So let's say in this example, I want to make the player move to the right. So I want to take the file version from player movement. So I can select that and you'll see it'll update the output. If you want, in some cases, you can choose, both versions. In this case, this would be an error because it's the same function name. But if you want to, you can select both and it'll add them both to the output. And in this case, you can see I only have one conflict. Sometimes you'll have more than one conflict and you'll have to go through and select one by one. But here we only have one. So I selected what I want. I checked the output. The output is exactly what I want. So let's go to the top right and hit save. And then you'll see it'll automatically create the commit for me. And then I'm just going to go ahead and push. And actually, in this case, there wasn't any changes because I already had the version of the project that was on player movement, which is my current branch. But now I want to update the main branch with those changes. So I'm going to go into main, and then I'll right click on the branch I want to merge in. So this is player movement, merge player movement into main, and it'll still have a merge conflict because I guess it didn't count the commit earlier. But in any case, I'm going to go through the same process where I selected the, sorry, not the main branch. I wanted the player movement branch. This time it's the right side. So select that, hit save. And now I have this commit that it created for me. And it auto-filled the commit message saying that it's merging the branches. I'm fine with that. And now you'll see I'm ahead on my local branch, so I can go ahead and push. And now it'll have these changes on the repository. So if I go ahead and check here, my main branch, it now has this commit, made player move to the right. I can even view my commits here if I want to, and here I have this merge that just happened right here. Yes. And this is the kind of main overview of what you're going to be doing with Git. So I walked you through like creating your account first, getting your repo set up in the first place, getting your Unity project on the repo, pushing, pulling, merging, creating branches. And one note that I want to give you guys, since you're working in Unity, is that working with scenes, if you have multiple people making changes to scenes, merging typically is not going to work very well with Git. So if you try to merge and you have merge conflicts, typically you're not going to be able to resolve it as easily as I could with the player file, because this is just a code file. So like Anthony's saying, try to only have one person working on, a certain scene at a time. That'll make it much easier to merge. But I'll also give you guys a resource here of this Unity Smart Merge, aka YAML merge. And this will be linked in the slides in the resources section where we have the links to GitHub and GitKraken. This tool makes merging scenes much, it makes it work much better. Although I would still recommend that you guys don't work in the same scene at the same time, because merging it, you can still run into issues even with this tool. So I'd recommend just avoiding that. But that should cover you guys for the vast majority of what you need to do with Git. And then also, if you want the student pack, you can just Google Git student pack. And here you just hit sign up, and this will work for GitKraken and like a whole bunch of other services. And you'll just fill it in. You'll fill in your information, obviously, and then get set up. And you can also, like, if I check out the benefits, oh, well, let me check it yet. But there's a whole bunch of different services that you get access to, including the like premium GitKraken version. So that covers the demo portion as well. And I'm, of course, going to take any questions now. That might have been a lot of info at once. But we have one right here. So when you refer to the scene, that's the game window, right? So it would be ideal to test out certain mechanics or code in separate scenes. Okay, yeah. So what I mean by working in the scene, so this code file here, like even if I attached it to something in the scene, if I made changes to this script now, that would be fine. It's separate. But if you had, let's say, a level designer creating something in the scene, so they were like adding objects in the scene, and then you have another person on a different branch who is also doing the same thing, adding objects or removing objects or changing objects in the scene. That's what I mean when I'm talking about making changes in the same scene. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anything in the Unity, anything in this like Unity scene view, if you're changing it, if you have multiple people changing it on different branches at the same time, you're probably going to run into issues when you're trying to merge them.
Moral of the story is exactly what Ethan said. Just make different scenes for the different mechanics that you're prototyping, and your level designer or whoever is in charge of actually putting the game world together can have a separate scene that they also work in.
Yes. Any more questions?
I guess just to be clear, once your scene is set up, so you have your player object, your scripts attached, whatever else, you can still remotely work on the code in those scripts. You just can't mess around with stuff in the scene. That's where you start running into conflicts.
Yep.
Yeah, to be technical about it, the scene is literally just a file. So if somebody makes an object, a cube, let's say, and then saves that, sends it off to the remote, and I make a square, save that and send that off into the remote, in the same file, Git is going to be like, hey, I don't know which version you want, so you're going to have to go in, and you look at that file, and you cry, because you can't read it. It's like not human legible.
Pretty
So
much, yeah.
that's why you want to avoid working like that. Definitely anything like major that you're doing different, try and make a different scene for it.
Yeah, and here during your game jam, you made a GitKraken account but never used it. So the free trial is only for like the premium benefits. You can actually use GitKraken without the premium version. But you can also use the school thing that I showed you just a second ago to add that account. But even with just the free version of Gitkraken, you can do everything that I was doing here. The only thing you can't do is put out a project that you're going to make money off of, or use a private repository. If you're going to use a private repository for your projects, you're going to need to get the premium version with the school student pack.
And just to add on to that, in terms of all the software that we used here, there's plenty of tutorials out there. You know, tech industry lately is trying to make everything as accessible as possible. So there's also, you know, you have this video to understand the basic concepts of repos, and then there's also other videos that you can watch on Gitkraken's website on how to use their stuff, or whatever GUI you're using. They most likely have a built-in tutorial.
Like, so I can add the student pack. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you have the account already, you can go through, just Google search GitHub student pack, and then just fill in your information, and you can add it to the account that you already have. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Any more questions? Anything at all?
How many people are going to go back and watch the recording? Good. Make sure you get this stuff down pat, because it's very important. Otherwise, you will pretty much not be able to work on your game. So.
Yeah, it's super important. I forget Git every year, so every time this this presentation happens in first year GDW in whatever form it takes, I'm always paying attention. And like, part of the reason why I'm interacting in chat here is, yes, to clarify certain things, but it's also kind of like hidden questions, making sure that I have the right idea of what's going on. And so, yeah, you know, I see Rylan saying, you know, it's really encouraging that I'm forgetful of the process and some of the verbiage. But I think, like, as an instructor, I see value in letting you, the students, know of my own limitations. And let me characterize them for you. I'm not working on large scale team code projects every single year the same way that you all will be. So naturally, it will follow that I won't be as kind of like polished on that skill set as you are. Which is why, again, I have the GPC come in to do this session, because they are far more inundated with those processes and are far more kind of like up to date with them. So you can learn better from you know, Anthony and Matt and other GPC members.
Well said.
Yeah, but don't even try to contest this guy on spreadsheets.
Nah.
You won't stand a chance. You won't stand a chance.
Lord. I remember all the spreadsheets.
I have a really cool one, but it's for this class, so I can't share it.
Dang. Okay, so I guess if there's no questions about the demo, we can get into the last little bit of the slides. If we're
Yes,
good.
let me stop sharing.
Cool.
Oh, I can do it from here. Cool.
All right. Again, sorry to those in the recording. We can hear the cars outside. Okay, cool. Excellent. So yes, these are the resources that I posted in the chat already, but they're on the slides. Stuff will be posted on Canvas for you guys to see, and also in GPC. Now for some little announcements. If you are interested in basically the workflow of your team and kind of how you're going to get stuff into the game, what is a game pipeline, what is DevOps, if you've never heard that word before, come to the session this Friday. It's going to be a little bit more advanced than introductory first year stuff, but it's going to be less about technical skill and more about um, arranging your team to work in a way that is efficient and doesn't cause you headaches. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely recommend checking it out. And for Game Sound Club, Ron DePrisco is coming in on November 22nd at 5 p.m. in the Discord. If you don't know who he is, he did the soundtrack for like 50 bajillion million games. He's been doing it for 20 years. He's done like Fortnite, Guacamelee, other stuff I can't think of off the top of my head. Go check the announcement. But yes, definitely come to that if you're interested in game sound. He is a valuable resource, and hopefully by the time you guys get to fourth year, if you're interested, he'll be running the advanced game sound course. So yeah, with that, that is the end of our invasion of your GUW. So yeah, thanks for having us along. If there's any questions before we leave, now would be the time.
Yeah, I'll let the recording run just for a few seconds until we've confirmed that there are no questions coming in. In the meantime, I'll relate an interesting story. I've actually never had a class with Ron DePrisco, but I remember a story because around the time that I was in grad school, he was teaching the advanced sound class and told them a really interesting story about his time working on Guacamelee. One of the tracks in that game, and I forget which one it was, but he was very excited and thought that like this cowbell that he had included in the percussion was like brought a lot of flavor to the track. And the people on the production team really didn't like it, so they were like, hey, you know, you got to take the cowbell out, it doesn't belong there. And so instead of taking it out, what he did in subsequent passes through the track was just reduce the volume just a little bit each time until eventually production stopped talking about it. So somewhere in Guacamelee, the original one, is a track with just like some faint cowbell. And so I can't attest to how true this story is because it is a story that was told to me. So
I feel like that story is 100% true. That sounds like a sound person if I've ever heard it.
It's the most passive aggressive music related thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, oh my god.
I think it's a fantastic story about developing content on contract for a game. However, again, since you're hearing it from me secondhand, I don't know how true it is. Maybe it was a different instrument. Maybe it was a different game or a different track, but you know, you're welcome to do your own research or whatever. But if not, you know, take it as a cute little anecdote.
His portfolio is linked in the announcements for Game Sound Club. It's literally like 10 pages long.
Rom's been in the industry for a very long time.
Got some exciting other GPC stuff happening too that we haven't unveiled yet, including some more learny sessions towards the end of the semester as we finally start getting into it, kind of like this one, but probably a little lighter because we'll have less time. But yeah,
I'm going to use that as an opportunity to shill again. So I'm going to put the Discord link in the chat if anyone hasn't joined it yet. Make sure you join up.
Dude, this guy, VP of the Discord link. That's what he is.
That's what I do.
And so to be clear, because I know there's a number of you here, we got 90 other people in the call. The link that Matt's posted is not the Discord for the general game dev stuff.
This is if you want to be a cool programmer. This is like specifically a club for programmers. And if you don't program, join anyway, because we will convert you.
For game programmers.
Yeah.
We're all. It's also worth noting that we're all upper year game dev students, so we can kind of, we kind of know how it is. We can help you guys out with your concepts or even like specific game programming advice. And yes, this is the one with Good Morning GPC.
Yes.
And yes, of course, GSC. I'm a GSC member. Of course GSC members can join.
Yeah. I mean, I would hope so, because then I would have a very big problem. Anyways,
There's a
real quick, I was just going to answer that question about the mirror. That is not going to be for a while for you newbies. Not in a condescending way. You're just new. But yeah, networking is a really complicated topic, and honestly, because the new program app is so different, we don't know what tool we're going to be using. If you're interested in networking, I would say maybe look into it on your own time, but definitely just probably save it for later down the line, unless you're super duper passionate about it, because it is a very deep topic.
Yeah. And yeah, we don't know. Like for us, we had to create our own networking solution from scratch, so we didn't get to use Mirror or anything like that. But for you guys, we have no idea because the program map is quite different. So you'll find out in time. C++, we do. So we did C++ for the first 2 years almost exclusively, and now we're doing C# as well. And we also worked in Unity last year as third years, now fourth years. So we can, if you want help with like concepts, Unity related, we can't help you guys, obviously, disclaimer, we can't help you like actually do your assignments, but we can help you guys understand the concepts and kind of share our info with you guys.
As with most things in game dev, a lot of it is going to be your own drive to do that self-learning. So GPC is a great place to start pushing that drive forward and having a community of people that can help you sustain that drive.
Yeah, I've said this before, but I think the student community for this program is incredible. And I know a number of you here in this call are already very intimately familiar with Jonathan J, who has been very good at, well, I guess he's your TA for game design as well. I've kind of missed that, but he's been in the GDW1 channel quite a bit, helping with a bunch of the program related stuff for especially around like board game time.
He's our frontline soldier.
Yeah, it's true. And I think like it's nice because our RTA Aiden is in and out. He's got his sessions on Tuesday nights. I'm in and out, whether it's like planning lectures or whatever. Like sometimes I'll pop in for announcements or to help out when I can. But the reality is that like with all of these classes and all of these students, having that support network, even amongst yourselves, is super helpful. And yeah, the reason that I brought up JJ is absolutely because of the dedication and effort that he's put into helping out your cohort. So yeah, very first year MVP at the moment, at least from the stuff that I can see.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. And then in a couple of years, it'll be one of you, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, count yourself amongst the exec team if you're active enough in GPC.
For sure. It does seem like we're low on questions related to Git, so I'm going to stop the recording on my end. So if you're watching this in the future, thanks for indulging us for the past 5 or 10 minutes of kind of not nonsense, but unrelated conversation. And I will see you in the next class.
All right, I'm stopping mine too. Goodbye.